everybody, I am back with Pot Roast Take 3. I'm Elizabeth from our Paleo family, and I've been so unhappy, honestly, with the way the pot roast has been turning out in the Instant Pot. And it should be perfect for pot roast. It even has pot in the name. It should be perfect, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn my Instant Pot on saute, and I'm going to adjust up to more. I want it on the highest level. I have just about a teaspoon or two of avocado oil in there getting hot, and I'm not following a recipe today. I decided I'm going to make this pot roast the way my grandma would have made it. She would not have had a recipe because the ingredients would have been very simple. And whenever I go to the meat counter, and I have asked different butchers to see, have I just gotten ones who didn't really know what they were talking about? But no, every time I go, they tell me get a chuck blade roast, which is what I have been making, and it is just not fall apart tender like I want. Whoops. Let me pause and sharpen my knife. So this particular day, I went to the grocery store. I went to Whole Foods, and I always want grass-fed beef, but they had very little that day. I'm guessing because of some of the wintry weather we've been having. And so I ended up with a conventionally raised piece of beef, which, you know, at least there aren't any hormones or anything, but it is still just a conventionally raised piece of meat. It has this little slab of fat, and I'm going to cut some of that off, which is why I sharpened my knife. This is a bottom round roast. I was looking for something that had some marbling because that's fat and that's going to add flavor and tenderness. So I wanted some of that, but that I didn't like the look of those chuck blade roasts. You know what? Don't comment on the way I'm cutting this off because I said it before. I'm not a trained chef. I don't have professional knife skills. I just have knife skills that work for me. So I'm just trying to get through this thick piece because it will. This is not going to render down in my cooking, and it's tough, and I want that off. I am going to cut this. This is 2.5 pounds, believe it or not. It's not very big, but 2.5 pounds. And I'm going to cut it into 3 chunks. It's so funny, all the different comments that people are making on the roast. You know, some people have great tips, and I appreciate them. All the tips that are given in kindness are very much appreciated. There are some that are not offered in kindness, and don't really appreciate those, but I'll just ignore those. So I'm going to cut this one down into 3 chunks. You see, there's pretty good marbling in there. Do you see that? Okay. I'm going to make myself a little dish of salt and pepper so I can stick my hands in it. So we have, like I said, really simple ingredients. My meat. So that's really about a teaspoon of salt. And I want about 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. That's a little bit more. That's okay. My oil is hot. I can smell it. So I'm going to just sprinkle this salt and pepper on my meat and get it in. Back to what I was saying about the comments. You know, for every comment, there seems to be an opposite comment. It's like our laws of motion. For every action, there's the opposite and equal reaction. So somebody says, don't sear your meat. Somebody else says, sear your meat. So anyway, if your grandma told you to do it and that's the way you've always done it, then you just go right ahead. I've always seared my meat, sometimes browned the meat, and that's what I'm going for here. I'm going for searing my meat. There's a little bit left in there. I'm not going to necessarily brown it. I just want to sear it. And then when that's done, I'm going to add in my vegetables. We have fairly large chunks of Yukon Gold potatoes, just regular old carrots. I didn't even peel them. I just scrubbed them. And then a large onion that I have sliced. When I first started using the Instant Pot, I would always saute on the normal level, which is what the Instant Pot people recommended. But as long as I'm right here hanging out, let me show you. This is perfect. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to do it on the more function because it's just faster, and I have not had anything burn. Again, I'm right here, I'm paying attention. So we have the meat, I'm going to add the vegetables, and I'm going to add broth. And this is 2 cups. This is a 16-ounce container of, it's Kettle and Fire brand beef broth. And I explained in another one of my videos, I've been wanting to try this because it's being talked about a lot in the paleo world. But it's very expensive, and it happened to be on sale this past week when I was at the store. And so I bought a couple to try with high hopes. And I can tell you that, in my opinion, it does not taste very good. It doesn't have a good flavor. But my point of reference is Grandma's beef broth that she made from bones from the cows that were in the field across the street. So grass-fed, you know, fresh. I'm sure they were given hormones at that time, but anyway, there's no comparing to that, and I haven't found a beef broth that's actually made with beef bones that tastes good. And this one is actually made from grass-fed bones. It's very pure ingredients, just seasonings, onions, carrots, celery, etc. But it doesn't have a great taste, in my opinion. But because I'm making a beef dish, I wanted to use beef broth instead of chicken. If you have only chicken broth, use chicken broth. That's what I usually use. And I'm not using anything fancy. No coconut aminos, no mustard, no wine, nothing. The meat, this is what you see right here. And I'm going to put it all in together because I have seen several recipes where people have cooked their pot roast with the vegetables for a full 90 minutes and swore up and down that the vegetables were not mushy. So we're just going to try it and see how it turns out. It happens to work for our lifestyle today, for what's going on. So I'm not even going to bother to sear the meat on every single side. You know, if it's sort of a square, it's going to have 6 sides. I'm just going to do about 4 sides, and then we're going to move on. But I will show you this and brag. We're having an event at church tonight. And so I volunteered to bring my sausage balls. They wasn't specifically sausage balls, and some gluten-free items. And so I made my primal sausage balls. If you're new to this paleo world, paleo is no dairy. Primal is the same as paleo, except it does include dairy. So these are primal. It's sausage, cheddar cheese, and almond flour, basically. A couple other ingredients. The recipe's on my website. But they are really good. They taste just like the ones made with that baking mix. And people gobble them up. They're super yummy. Okay, look at that browning. That's just what we want. You can see I have a little bit of that fond on the bottom of my pan. Not a lot. And I'm just going to pour in. Now it'll get quiet. This full container of broth. That will just make us a lot of gravy. I could have gotten away with just 1 cup of broth or water. That would have been enough. But with pot roast, you want lots of gravy, right? So I cut my onion into rings, or half moons, I guess. I'm just sort of separating them out and laying them on top of the meat. So I'm just going to layer everything in. The onions, then the carrots, and then the potatoes. And the only salt and pepper was the teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon of pepper that I put on my meat. So probably these veggies are going to want a little bit of seasoning, but I don't want to over season. So we'll let them go just like this, and when we're making the broth, we can add some more. Okay, a couple pieces of onion there. So my gasket is in there. My valve is on. I have moved it to sealing. I have to turn it off. Oh, I did that already. No, I didn't. And then I just always use manual because that lets me really adjust high pressure, low pressure, and the amount of time that I want. Actually, I need to calculate my time here. Yeah, that's right. 90 minutes. We're doing 90 minutes. And we'll see you on the back side. Hi everybody. So the pot roast cooked for 90 minutes. and I want to show you what it looks like. So my potatoes are very soft, but they are intact. I just turned the pot off and then turned it on to saute because I'm going to add a little arrowroot slurry to turn my broth into a gravy. The carrots, again, very soft, but in fact they are intact. And my roast cooked for 90 minutes, and then I told you we had an event at church and we just got back, and so it actually sat here for an hour after it finished cooking. And my guess would be it took, based on the volume of liquid in here, probably took 20 to 30 minutes for the pressure to come down, and then it continued to sit for that additional amount of time. Now I'm going to be fast about this, so I'm just going to let my veggies sit here, but you could certainly have your oven warm and stick these in the oven. Now in my earlier versions of this recipe, I told you I was following the recipe of someone else, and they said at this point to take the vegetables out, put them on a tray, put them in the oven, and broil them to get sort of crispy bits. And it was delicious, and that worked really well, but I'm trying to streamline here. I'm trying to make this less fussy. Now the onions do basically dissolve, but that's kind of what we want. We want all that flavor, but you know, the kids would just pick them out. So I'm kind of making myself a little hole in the center there so that I can nestle my meat down in there. And it is boiling already, which is great. I'm trying to get the bulk of the big veggies out. I'm going to put a piece of foil over this, and I'll shred up the meat. And it shouldn't take me too long to deal with the meat because there weren't big pieces of fat in there that I'm going to need to sort through. Okay, let me cover this. I'll give all of that a taste together in a minute. So let me pull my meat out, which remember I cut into 3 pieces. There'll be some little bits of smashed vegetable with that. No problem. I'll tell you what, it smelled really delicious when it was cooking. Okay, so I'm going to shred that up with my forks in just a second. But I have the arrowroot just sort of settles to the bottom, so I'm just kind of gently scraping it, and it'll blend back into the water. So I had 2 tablespoons of water, 1 tablespoon of arrowroot. Sometimes I thicken with glucomannan. If you've watched any of my other videos, you've seen that. And that one, basically, you've got to mix it and pour it in right away. This arrowroot slurry is a little more forgiving, and so I'm only going to pour part of this in, about half of it, a little over half, and let that simmer, and then I'll decide if I want to add more. There's a stray potato or carrot in there. That's no problem. Just let it be. Okay. Oh, look at that. It's just what we want. I just want to make sure it doesn't taste dry because, you know, meat that's overcooked can taste almost, have sort of a sandy texture to it. Beef and pork don't do it quite as much as poultry does. This is what I've been looking for, folks. Tastes delicious. You can tell it's going to need a little bit more salt because even the meat needs a little more salt. Very tender. Break apart very easily. I'm going to go ahead and place this on my platter, and I will put some of the gravy right on top. I'll pour it on top, and I will, just to keep it moist, and I will mostly serve the gravy on the side. A nice sprig of some kind of fresh green herb would look lovely, which reminds me, at least one commenter on the my original pot roast video said, you know, add some rosemary or thyme, some kind of fresh herbs. Absolutely, if that floats your boat, go for it. But I told you with this one, we were just really sticking to the basics. Intentionally, I wanted it to be basic. I wanted a good piece of meat for my meat flavor to really shine through. I need the rest of that. And I might need even just a tad more. But I am going to taste it because I have a feeling it needs some more seasoning. It does. It needs some salt and pepper. A good amount, actually. And it needs to be a little bit more thickened. So just boiling will thicken it. Also, I could add just a little bit more of my arrowroot mixture. I don't know about the weather where you are, but where we are having a record-setting stretch of record low temperatures, and it is cold. So even though I've been honest and I've said this before, this just isn't my favorite dish. My husband loves it, so that's why I make it. If he didn't like it, we would never have pot roast. I don't know why, but it's just not one of my favorite things. I'm going to fish this carrot out of here so I can taste it. And there's also a potato in here. I'm going to taste that as well. But the warmth of this is certainly going to be delicious on a cold, cold night. I'm going to take a little piece of meat. I'm going to give all this a taste, just how I would eat it. I got arrowroot on me when I was making a little bit more slurry. So, I mean, that carrot, you can see how I cut through this. It has texture. I would absolutely do it this way again. No more fussing with release the pressure. Add the vegetables, cook 10 more minutes. I want a teeny bit more salt in there, and then I'm going to serve up a serving. That 2.5 pound roast, I would say, was the right amount for my family. We will not eat all of this tonight, but it will make leftovers. Keep that warm. Pour on some gravy, which most of the onions are down there in the gravy. And there's dinner. I'm going to sprinkle some herbs on there. Put a little sprinkle of herb de Provence. And there we go, pot roast in the Instant Pot. It actually turned out the way I wanted. I used a bottom round roast, which still had a decent amount of marbling, but it was not the chuck roast, which is what was most recommended for a pot roast. I simply rubbed it with salt and pepper, seared it in a little avocado oil, chopped up fairly large chunks, yellow potatoes, carrots, and 1 large onion in slices, and 2 cups of beef broth, and cooked it for 90 minutes. And then of course it sat there for another hour, and it's great. It's perfect. It could have been done an hour earlier, and it could probably be done 30 minutes, maybe even an hour later. You know, it's very forgiving. So there is hope yet for the pot roast in the Instant Pot. This one was delicious and very simple, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.